this isn't going to be like go down to your local Harris Teeter and buy a bunch of gift cards, like the popular scams or whatever, right? So
this is the time to build an AI that detects AI and sell it to all these businesses.
Are you telling me you guys don't go down to your local supermarket every week and buy iTunes gift cards? Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast. Cloud adoption is on the rise, and many network infrastructure professionals are being asked to adopt a hybrid approach. As individuals who have already started this journey, we would like to empower those professionals with the tools and the knowledge to bridge the gap. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cables to Clouds. Today we have another installment of our latest Fortnightly news podcast. So we've got a lot to get through today, so we're gonna kind of just jump right into it. So before we actually get into the news, I actually want to toss this over to Tim and let him elaborate a bit, because just a few weeks ago he was actually at the RSA conference. So there's obviously quite a bit about security and cloud security, things like that, going on at RSA. I believe you were there with our employer, Aviatrix, so I'm sure you were on booth duty for quite a bit of the time. But curious to get kind of your rundown of the conference, your take on what the overall themes were. What was your impression of the conference so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, this was our first year. First of all, this is my first time attending RSA. I did not realize how really big that conference is. So like cybersecurity, obviously cybersecurity is big. Everybody knows that, right? And RSA is kind of an industry neutral conference, which means that it invites everybody more or less, or allows anybody to show up. So, but yeah, it's bigger than, I think it's actually bigger than Cisco Live. It was absolutely gigantic. It was in San Francisco. So anyway, my first time being there, Aviatrix first time being there as well. We were there to show off the distributed cloud firewall and some of the stuff there. So what I thought was really cool about RSA was how, first of all, like I said, how impossibly large it is, but also how many, like it struck me that, bigger than a football field, how many booths, how many different vendors there are. And, coming from a networking world, we've been to like World of Solutions at Cisco Live and everything. And, all of the solutions that you see are networking focused, right? And of course, RSA is a cybersecurity conference, but what I found really, really interesting about that is how many different kind of vendors there are. And when I say different kind of vendors, I mean, they are tagging like every layer of the OSI model, pretty much, like we're talking, I saw some physical security stuff there. I saw stuff, like not quite MaxSec, but even, that level of stuff, network layer stuff, layer 4. I saw so many things like agent-based stuff for your workloads in the cloud, non-agent stuff, so much SASE, SSE. The acronyms are strong with this one, of course, right? And it was just really, really interesting to see not only how many vendors there are in the cybersecurity space, but the huge, the much larger range of them, how many there are, that cover all those different pieces. And, and you think about that actually people in cybersecurity, there are people that focus only on some piece of that, right? So cybersecurity is huge, right? We all know that. But coming as a network guy to a cybersecurity conference, it really puts it in perspective. Anyway, so what I thought was really cool, some of the stuff we saw there, of course, Cisco was there. They were showing off HyperShield, which is their new security thing. Nothing really came out, nothing really showing on the floor about how they're going to integrate isovalent, the eBPF stuff yet. So I think they're still keeping all that very close to the chest. I'm not even sure if they've have integrated anything at this point, right? But all the big cybersecurity vendors were there except for Palo Alto, which was a real surprise, actually. So we asked around, and Palo was doing stuff outside the conference. So like they didn't come to the conference, but they were pulling people out, to some function space that was nearby. And I kind of wondered, is it just that Palo was like, they didn't want to be crowded with everybody? Like, you know, they don't need brand awareness, right? But neither does Cisco, if you put it that way. So that was kind of a weird thing to me, was that a lot of people were talking about Palo, but Palo themselves were not there. And and some of the booths that I was seeing were just absolutely, you know, well, you guys know, you've been to Cisco Live. Think of it like that, but even bigger. But anyway, so yeah, so get back to it. What the biggest thing I kept seeing from and I wrote a blog about this, by the way. It ended up getting posted on the Aviatrix website, so we can link that in the news notes as well, because it kind of explains it better now that I'm 3 weeks away from RSA. It's a little bit dimmer in my mind, but the biggest thing that people were talking about were how do we get the telemetry, how do we get the data, and then how do we get it somewhere where it's useful, right? So that's always been the case with SIMs and whatnot, but it's so much more now, because you think about, like I said, all these cybersecurity vendors are hitting all these different layers of the stack. All of those layers of the stack have something to say, and so not only getting it out of that into like cloud storage or whatever, some kind of log parsing or data analysis tooling. But then being able to surface actionable insights from it, that was like the biggest asks that I was seeing from vendors. There was like, okay, you can give me all the data that you want, but like I need it to, I need it to be useful. I need it to be actionable, because that's always been the real complaint with SIMs and whatnot, is that, yeah, we can pipe, 1,000 logs a second to a SIM, but like if nobody ever reads the logs, what the hell is the point? So that was a big one that I kept seeing, and a lot of vendors were, of course, AI everywhere, right? I was leading into like AI became like the new, of course, AI is the golden child, so AI was like a huge thing everywhere.
Yeah, actually, I heard something where somebody was like, it was almost like AI completely replaced zero trust. Like zero trust was barely
buzzword wise,
barely there, and yet AI was everywhere.
Yeah. So I did hear lots of zero trust. Yeah, exactly. I did hear lots of zero trust still, but still the industry can't quite coalesce around what that means. Like, what does zero trust mean to everybody, right? I'm firmly in the identity camp personally. Like, identity-based access is still where I'm at on a zero trust perspective. But there's stuff like workload east-west type of stuff where applications don't have identity, right? So how do we profile them? How do we, so there's still a lot to it, but like in terms of access, which is really where people tend to talk about with zero trust, or talked about before AI replaced everything about zero trust. It tended to be a user accessing resources like type of discussion, right? Which is identity is probably the only way to go with that. So anyway, a lot of discussions. It was a really cool conference. I hope to be able to go again next year. Aviatrix had a good showing. We were like in the very back left corner of the floor, and it's because we were really late deciding to go. So, but even then, actually, what I also thought was really cool about RSA is that the people there actually get around. Like, they actually don't just stay right around the big booths. We got tons of foot traffic even, and I noticed that people around me. Booths around us were getting tons of foot traffic. So the people there, like the cybersecurity professionals that are there, they want to see it all. Like they want to see what's out there. So that was really cool to see.
Nice. Yeah, good synopsis. I'd be super interested to go. Like you said, I didn't know it was that big. Like I saw,
I didn't either.
Reports that it was like, I think over 40,000 people or something like that, which
easily.
is like crazy. They're like, that's at least probably close to 15,000 more than usually is at Cisco Live, which also feels insanely big every time we go. But actually, funny story that saying that by the time you're hearing this, it's probably Wednesday midweek. But Tim is at Cisco Live, so if you are there, now is probably your last day or second to last day to hang out with him. So if you want to chat with Tim, give him shit, please find him.
That's fine.
And do so. Yes.
I go home Thursday morning. So if you want to give me shit, please make sure that you stand in an orderly line.
It's a long one. It's a long line.
It's a very long line.
All right. So that was good. Thanks, Tim, for that. So let's roll into the news. And I think we're going to let Alex kick it off here. So I'll throw it over to you, Alex.
Yep. As usual, we have to always start off with some kind of story about AI and especially OpenAI because they're just never out of the news. So we got an article from TechCrunch. We talked about this the last news episode, but what are their names? Jan Lakey and Isla Sutskever. I'm butchering their names again, but they both resigned recently. Jan was actually in charge of the super alignment team for OpenAI, which was basically like security, not security. What do I call it? Safety. It's like a board, like a team basically built around safety standards for what OpenAI is producing. And of course, so he was not unemployed long. Anthropic went and picked him up, and now he heads a super alignment team, but for Anthropic. I don't think this is any surprise. I think all these people, if they leave one company, they're going to be picked up so quickly somewhere else. With just this battle at the top of the AI ladder, the AI hierarchy, if you will. So I don't think there's been any surprises there. And then this is the fun one. This has been bothering me for days since I read this first. So this is an article from Mashable. And the headline is OpenAI launches new internal safety team with Sam Altman in control. And the reason this is so comical is I read one of the things in this article says like this new safety board says it's their responsibility to advise the board, like the company board for OpenAI on safety standards and procedures, like measures and stuff that they're doing. But it's made up of board members. This is like a clown world. Like how are we in a spot where you can advise yourself about safety measures and that's fine when it comes to AI? I just don't even, what do you guys think here? This is so crazy to me. Like
it's, it's the foxes guarding the henhouse, or actually the foxes wearing chicken costumes. I'm not sure what analogy makes sense here. It's absolutely insane though. Like and as I've pontificated before, it's kind of scary to see how quickly things like ethics and AI and safety and AI are just basically pushed to the side in the mad dash to be first to, and I've said this so many times now, the mad dash to be first across the finish line with that AI product that's going to sell. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have any additional commentary to give around the concern that I would have about OpenAI. I think I echo both of y'all's sentiments, but one thing I am curious about is like when does all this kind of stuff start to factor into how Microsoft feels about being so tightly integrated with OpenAI? And I wonder when they start reacting to that. I think, it's no question that OpenAI has kind of leaned into like, look, we don't need a marketplace of models. We have one model that is the best general purpose model out there. And Microsoft seemed to have leaned into that. But I wonder if like this kind of stuff is going to cause them to make a move in any certain direction, because obviously between them and Google, it's a competitive area right now. So I'm wondering if that's going to bring any odd bubbles to the surface, but I digress.
Yeah. I mean, in 2 weeks, who knows what could happen? They could be on top of the world again. They could be disbanded. Like I'm sure they'll be in the news again in 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll just leave it at that. All right. And then my last one here, I got one from SiliconANGLE. So this is Prosimo and Palo Alto networks collaborate to bring zero trust to multi-cloud environments. This article is a little weird to me because there probably is a deeper post somewhere that kind of goes into how this works. But what I'm confused about is if this is Prosimo embedded in a Palo Alto VM, or if this is Palo Alto embedded in like a Prosimo Kubernetes cluster. Because to me, that makes like a huge difference here. But essentially, it's just an integration between Prosimo does multi-cloud networking, right? And they do it they have these Kubernetes clusters that go into basically all your regions. I don't want to say it's similar, but they're in the same space as Aviatrix and as Alkira, right? So just think of that same kind of model. And this integration just allows them to, I guess, as they put it, like steer traffic, only the traffic that needs to be steered through the security devices. I need to find like a deeper blog post on this, like the technical parts of it and how it actually works. Because they also mention they have two models of delivery. One is a centralized model and one is a distributed model. And we were just talking about this before, but distributed, it sounds like they say there is a firewall in every single VPC. I don't know if anyone knows how much it costs to run these Palo Alto VM series, but if you have that in every single one of your VCs and it's embedded into a Prosimo Kubernetes cluster, people are just lighting money on fire, I think. So what do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, full disclosure, Tim and I do work for Aviatrix, who is a direct competitor with Prosimo, but so you can take everything I say with a grain of salt. But one thing that I think is very interesting about this article to me is that I think it does lean in that distributed security is an important thing. I think kind of all of us would agree that distributing security as opposed to putting it in a centralized manner is probably a good way to go. But when you get into the nut, or kind of get into the weeds about only certain traffic, it calls out specifically that it's not just ports and protocols that govern what needs to go to a firewall, whereas now they're looking at even more specific traffic than that. When you let the network stack start playing into that, integrating into security and determining what needs to be inspected, what doesn't, sometimes you can play a dangerous game. So it depends on how that integration works, I guess. I'd be curious to see it. But yeah, that's the only commentary I really have. I don't know about you, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I read the article, and again, I'm fully aware that I work for a competitor of Prosimo. Although, having said that, I probably should have by now taken more effort to understand the Prosimo offering beyond basically what Alex said. I mean, the article, it basically says they're partnering with Palo Alto Networks to deploy Palo Alto VM series in either centralized model or a distributed model, and that there's going to be some intelligence about what traffic gets steered to those firewalls. So all's good in the hood. That sounds, again, that is something that, Aviatrix has been doing for years. Again, this is not a sales thing. So I'm trying to be very, very careful in the way I word this and understand that I'm not here to sell anyone Aviatrix. However, having said that, we also can't just ignore the fact that this is a capability that Aviatrix has had both in the centralized and the distributed model. We don't do VM series, I think, is the big difference, right? We don't do deploy Palo Altos in everybody's VMs, or in everybody's VPCs rather. That's a difference. I'm right there with you, Chris. I would love to know, when we talk about intelligence steering, where's the intelligence and what is the intelligence and how foolproof is the intelligence? And because if it works, that's freaking awesome. That would be amazing, right? If it works exactly as advertised, that would be freaking amazing. That would go a long way towards application zero trust, which is, I'm not coining that phrase. I just mean the actual idea of zero trust between workloads. That would be a really cool thing to see, right? But yeah, that's about all I have to say about it.
Something to call out real quick, since you guys both brought this up. Talking about this intelligence, it would be great if they elaborate on that more, because they do layer 4 through 7. They have application networking and not just traditional networking like we're used to. So if that's all integrated into this intelligence, I mean, that it has the potential, at least I'll say, to be, to have some really cool and innovative features, if you will. So, yeah, that's all I got for that one. I think Chris, you're up next.
Yes. So real quick, I wanted to talk about this one. This is actually an event that occurred back in, I believe it was February, but I was at an event the other day, and someone was disclosing that more information had come out just recently about this particular event. So this is a top, I think they're British based, consulting. Sorry, I had to move the window around. So British engineering company, Arup. I'm not sure exactly how they pronounce it, but there was reports back in February that there was a deepfake scam that involved an employee in Hong Kong sending out which I believe the equivalent of 200 million Hong Kong currency, which comes out to about 20 million pounds. You can do the math on what that is in USD or AUD because I don't know it. But the details that have come out have made this so much scarier. So it basically there was an employee based in Hong Kong basically received some communications that were falsified. Convinced this individual to join a conference call with several individuals on the phone call. But that was using both voice and video for each of the participants, and apparently these were all deep fakes. So obviously they had taken recordings of these people's voices, generated an AI version of them, basically with video and audio, and convinced this individual to transfer this amount of money, so $200 million, into about 15 separate accounts, because they were the deepfakes were placating as the executives of the company. And I think this is fucking insane, because we talk about AI so much and we're like, oh, like we're in such early days, right? This is, we're barely into the first inning. We don't know where this thing's going to go. There's so much more opportunity, but like if we're this early on and shit like this is already happening, like how much worse is this really going to get? So I just really wanted to call that out and talk about that, because obviously this is kind of like one of these like social engineering type scams, right? And these are the ones where people are most vulnerable, I think. So yeah. How about you guys? What's your thoughts?
Oh, it's going to get a lot worse, I think, for sure. Like you said, I do believe that we are still in early innings. And like you said, if this is early innings and we're seeing this already, we're not even going to be able to imagine the things that are going to come out in, I was going to say 5 years, but that's like not even 5 years. Talk about like 1 or 2 years at the rate everything's going. It'll be crazy to watch.
The only thing that gives me some hope there is because it is the early innings. This reminds me a lot of like the first computer viruses or like the first cyber attacks that like they got by largely on the fact that these hadn't been perpetrated before. And so the rigor wasn't there. So I expect to see, I would hope to see, I don't expect to see, I would hope to see, I pray to see some countermeasures, in place or something where like, okay, well now we're going to have to add extra layers of rigor because it's so easy to deep fake. So now it's like almost like 2-factor authentication and shit like that. Like I think a year from now that this might not even be able to be perpetrated because action will have been taken to make sure that there's extra levels of rigor before doing this, right? This person had no reason to believe anything other than it was completely legitimate, right? But moving forward, I assume a lot of companies will say like, hey, we need to add these extra procedures, extra process. This isn't going to be like go down to your local Harris Teeter and buy a bunch of gift cards, like the popular scams or whatever, right? So I would expect to see a lot more rigor. I think this worked because we're still in the early days.
This is the time to build an AI that detects AI and sell it to all these businesses.
Are you telling me you guys don't go down to your local supermarket every week and buy iTunes gift cards for your Nigerian prince that emails you on a regular basis? No, I'm just kidding. But the thing is, this is very selfish of me to say this, but I am actually terrified of all of the necessary change in behaviors we're all going to have to make because of this shit. Like when I was at this event, we were talking about this, and like we kind of started elaborating on how you're going to get around things like this. And it's like you're going to have to start getting on the phone with people. Like even if you're getting emails, you're on a conference, like you're going to have to just call the phone number that you know for this person, talk to them, and then people are even talking about like, oh well, like, you know, there were banks in the past that did this like voice recognition stuff for identifying customers. That shit's out the door. Like that's gone. Like anyone that was using that's outdated technology now. But now people are talking about like, oh, when I talk to someone, I might like change the pitch in my voice just to like make it sound like give some kind of authenticity. Yeah, like to where it sounds like that can prove that I'm not an AI recording or something. And it's like, you're going to have secret passwords. Like I'm already fucking sick of opening Microsoft Authenticator on my phone 600 fucking times a day. And now I'm going to have to start calling people on a regular basis and doing all this other crazy shit to get around this. Like, I'm sorry, it's pretty selfish, but like, dude, I'm going to waste so much fucking time just like verifying who I'm talking to is who I'm talking to.
Well, you know, the victim, the real, and we shouldn't spend too much more time on this probably, but the real victims of this are going to be your grandparents, right? It's going to be people.
Yeah, big time.
You know what I mean?
They're
that's
already,
the people we need to look out for.
They're already.
Yes, that's my point. And that they're the ones going down to the supermarket and buying all the iTunes gift cards right now.
Right.
You know, how hard is this going to be? So,
sad times. But okay, let's move on from that. So next article that we have, this is a quick one. I won't spend too much time on it, but article from Network World, just talking about Alibaba Cloud betting on emerging markets with massive price cuts. So it kind of just talks about them, you know, expanding into new public cloud regions and sectors, and reducing the price on some of its products outside of mainland China by up to 59%. So which I will tell you, you know, we even on this podcast give a lot of shit to Google and OCI. Like we don't even really talk about Ali Cloud very much at all, right? But I will tell you, being in, especially being in this part of the world, operating in China is a very huge thing. And Ali Cloud obviously has this thing called the CEN, which is the Cloud Enterprise Network, which is basically, in very layman's terms, they have an agreement with basically China Telecom that they can send some of their data through the Great Firewall without a great deal of processing and things like that, which is very valuable to a lot of, you know, enterprise customers that operate in China. And getting data in and out of China is going to be a huge thing. So this kind of stuff I could see being, you know, I could see it being a springboard for Ali Cloud to actually move up in the ranks a little bit. It's hard to tell. I mean, if I've used Ali Cloud, I will say some of their constructs are very primitive and not as polished as, you know, AWS and Azure and things like that. But I'm very interested to see if this works out for them in that regard. So, how about you guys? What do you think?
I don't really have anything to add to this one. I think I'm with you, Chris. I could see this really kind of start setting them up to be a little bit more of a competitor for sure.
So I've actually been to China twice, and I've been inside China Telecom data centers, and you know, China Telecom pretty much runs the show over there. If you want to get through the Great Firewall, you're using China Telecom. It's the state-run internet like provider, if you will, not just internet, but like pretty much provider. So, you know, having worked for an enterprise that had to essentially deal with this exact problem before there was an Ali Cloud, you know, it's a pain in the ass, right? So pretty much any way you can find to get data in and out of China in a way that doesn't require, you know, not necessarily going through everything, more or less goes through the Great Firewall in some way or another, but certainly without having your data impacted by it, you know. especially because at one point you couldn't, and I don't know if that's changed, but you couldn't even encrypt, right? Like they had to be able to TLS proxy all your traffic and all of that, right? That may still be the case. I'm not sure. So point being, if Ollie Cloud has essentially a managed service that can get you in and out of China through using their cloud offer, I definitely see value in that far more than value of, hey, here's a here's a CSP that we can use, right? Like I wouldn't say, should I use AWS or Ollie Cloud unless I had to do business in China, right? Like, like having said that, I do. So I think the point is, I think the value is not necessarily in that, they're going to be as awesome and well polished as Microsoft, as Azure or AWS or GCP. It's simply going to be the fact that they've got the right people in their pocket, or they're in the right people's pockets, depending on how you want to think about it, to ease that transition and make that easy, make that piece of it easy.
Supply and demand, right? They've got something people need that they literally can't get from probably anyone else.
Yep.
So, yep. All right. Nice work. Toss it over to you, Tim. I think you got a couple to round us out for today.
Yeah. So first one is, so I know we reported last time that Alkira had just done a Series C funding, right? Is it C? Yeah, C funding.
Yeah, C.
And they had raised $100 million, and we were kind of like, holy crap, I couldn't believe how long they'd gone between rounds for that. So they'd been running really tight ship. Well, so Adil Khan, the CTO and co-founder, basically has now said like, okay, well, here's what we plan to do with this money. So it's pretty interesting stuff. A lot of it goes into widening the Alkira backbone. No surprise there. Like that's an obvious one. There's a fair amount of AI stuff in here. I tend to raise my eyebrows these days every time I hear about new spending new money on AI capabilities for my product. But it seems like he's got a pretty good idea of where to put the money, like AI ops, meaning, hey, this is a network product. So we should be putting AI in that's going to help run the network and operate it and make it, easy to diagnose stuff and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, of course, we'll put the article in the show notes, but nothing particularly surprising in here. But that's probably the right play, right? Like if they'd raised $100 million and said we're about to spend $101 million on some crazy new thing that doesn't exist, we'd all probably be scratching our heads a lot more. So this is considering how conservative they've been. This is probably the right move for them. They got money and they're going to use it just to expand their operations. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think they made it. I'm guessing. I think this is right, but I think it was like they made it 4 years off of their Series B, which was like 55 million or something. So them talking about how they're going to spend 100 million, really, that's probably obviously just a very small portion of that 100 million that they're talking about what they're doing with. And at that rate, they could last another 8 years, so it's cool. Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear plenty more throughout the next couple of years about as their plans evolve.
Yeah, not much to add from me. Kind of right there with you, Tim. Excited to see what they can do with this. Obviously, they've done a lot over, like you said, 8 years with only being on their previous round of funding. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention that that last article. It'll be in the show notes, but it was from Fierce Network. So let's move on to the next one here. And this one's kind of the funny one of the story of the day. So from cloudcomputingnews.net, there's a new SaaS manager. Manage Engine unveils a new SaaS manager program. So it's a SaaS manager where the product is managing your SaaS applications. So a manager of managers, if you will. So the idea is just what it sounds like, organizations that more or less consume a lot of SaaS applications may not be up to date with, what they're paying for, what they're using, all the details, credentials, and so on and so forth. So Manage Engine is essentially offering, I hesitate to say like one password or whatever, like a manager for your entire SaaS portfolio. I'm just waiting for somebody to come out with an orchestrator that manages the manage engine, but we'll have to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Is it really? Are we at that point now where? Because I thought the whole point of SaaS was supposed to be it was pretty much turnkey, right? Like there's not even anything really to manage outside of whatever you're paying the bill and maybe your users. But are we at that point now where we need a manager of managers for SaaS applications?
Yeah, this one is pretty comical. Man, the funny thing is, this is like, I just looked it up. It's called Rocket Money. I keep hearing this ad about this thing all the time, where it's a subscription service to help you figure out what subscriptions are coming out of your bank account. And it's like, what kills me is like, what stops people from, once they get this in place and they get a handle on everything, why don't they just cancel it? Like, I don't understand. They must have like 5-year terms or something to make sure that they get the money. It's just funny to me.
So what I'm wondering about that one, because I agree with you, what I'm wondering about that, and I keep seeing the ads for that too, I'm asking myself, how are they finding out, like credentials wise, what I'm subscribed to if I don't know what it is? Like, the whole point is they're supposed to tell me, like, hey, you've got all these subscriptions, you should cancel them. Well, I'm obviously not going to tell you what those are. So how are you going to?
I think what it is they just basically, you provide them access to your bank account. They look at all the transactions and they see like, oh, you had something come out from Netflix, or you had something come out from...
Maybe that's true.
But my bank classifies charges for me already. It's like,
that's the funny thing about it, is it's going to tell you some shit that you definitely can find on your own with a very low level of effort. I mean, maybe they prompt you like, when's the last time you watched Paramount Plus or something? I don't know. I don't know how like it. I mean, I have no room to talk. I'm definitely one of those people that is probably subscribed to 2 or 3 SaaS services, or not SaaS, but like streaming services that I don't fucking use. I used it once and forgot to cancel it.
Yeah.
Actually just canceled one like 2 days ago. Sorry, Stan. But I don't know. It's, we need a network to connect our networks. We need a firewall to manage our firewalls. Let's just take everything like 6 rungs back. You're no longer interacting with the actual products that you use. That's what I'd like to see.
A single pane of glass.
But then you need a manager for all your single panes.
I will need something to manage my single pane of glass at some point. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Maybe people need this. If you need this, then please definitely let us know. So how many SaaS applications it took for you to buy this thing. So, or subscribe to it rather. And I think that's all I've got.
I believe that's it. Yeah. So thanks again for joining us today for a real battle royale.
There it is.
Latest installment of our Cables to Clouds Fortnightly news podcast. God, it never gets easy to say all that at once. I'll tell you that. So I apologize for stumbling on my words. But if you guys enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. More importantly, if you like this, please share it with someone. Please tell someone about it. We're really looking to grow the community, we have you listening right now. We need your friends. Go get your buddies. We need all of them to also listen to us. Not because we're cool or we're interesting, just because, we're friends now. You're listening to us. You owe us a favor as a friend. So all kidding aside, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Hi, everyone. It's Chris. And this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables to Clouds. You can also visit our website for all of the show notes at cablestoclouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.